I would like to share a few thoughts with you today of the legacy of what Dr. King means to me. I remember as a young kid, I used to watch this movie, Our Friend Martin, and it was inspired by the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I can recall the two sixth graders, Miles and Randy, who experienced a time-traveling magical adventure back into the history, and they were able to learn all about the life of Dr. King. Although I never met him personally, I've heard, read, and seen a lot of what he stood for. The best way I can relate to you what an icon Dr. King has meant to me is to share with you what I'm most familiar with, being a high school quarterback. As a freshman, I remember walking to an unfamiliar locker room filled with the smell of athletes, with cleats, shoulder pads hanging in lockers already claimed by many upperclassmen that were the definition of the Jefferson football varsity team. There I stood, not knowing many of them, not really friends with any of them, expected to lead the team for the next 4 years. Me, a leader. I stood there in that locker room, all eyes on me. Although not a word was spoken, I could hear loud and clear the question on every player's mind. What are you doing here in our locker room? I must say, it was very overwhelming. As I reflect on the life of Dr. King, I'm sure he was faced with many unfamiliar situations. I imagine some of those situations may have seemed overwhelming at first. I'm sure he stood confident in himself and encouraged those around him to pursue excellence. No matter how overwhelming things may seem, dig deep inside and pull out all the gifts, talents, and abilities that God has given you to do your best and strive for greatness. And so I did. I worked hard, I tried my best to be a good leader and encourage my teammates. As time went on, things got better. Our team played in our first state tournament since 2008. I know that Dr. King will want me to be all I can be on the field as well as off the field. I'm not sure if Dr. King played any sports, but I do know he was pretty busy with many other things. In the 11-year period between 1957 and 1968, Dr. King traveled over 6 million miles, spoke over 2,500 times, wrote 5 books, led massive protests, arrested more than 20 times, was pastor of a church, directed the peaceful march on Washington, D.C. of 250,000 people, awarded 5 honorary degrees, named Man of the Year by Time magazine, and won a Nobel Peace Prize. In fact, he was the youngest to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. When he was notified of his selection, he announced that he would turn over the prize money of over $50,000 to the enhancement of the civil rights movement. That's a lot of money. In my closing, although I'm happy to get a day out of school to celebrate the life of Dr. King, I do realize that it is because of Dr. King that I'm able to get an education that is equal opportunity and fair. I appreciate his legacy and the place in our time. In the words of Dr. King, we are not makers of history, we are made by history.